You're listening to a special edition of Not So Live from Asteroid G. I'm your host, Mike Finkelstein. Joining me in the booth via the magic of the internet is Thilenios, a person I know from the Final Fantasy randomizer community. Now, Thilenios is your online name. You also go by Tyler in real life. How are you doing today, sir?
Oh, it's a lovely Saturday morning, sun shining, so it's a good day. It's a good day.
But when we were talking earlier, apparently you just got done watching the World Cup a match in there. I'm assuming that's soccer?
Yes, the Soccer World Cup.
Okay. There are a number of them, and I want to make sure. Plus, I don't pay attention to sports, so it's everything is like a ball or a puck, and that's as deep into as I get. Well, what matchup was it? If you don't mind me asking.
This morning was Netherlands and Cameroon.
Was it a good match?
Yeah, I mean, what I watched was pretty good. It's a 2-1 match, so
that's actually that's good for soccer.
Played tough.
Yeah. What I know of soccer, that's a good match. Okay, so I know you from the Final Fantasy randomizer community. That's where we've met online on the Discord there in support of it. So let's start there and move out. How exactly did you get involved in Final Fantasy randomizer? How long have you been with the community?
Let's see. I think I joined the Discord during last year's spring tournament, actually. I watched some of that, and I didn't really get active in the Discord. I kind of kept it muted, but I got everything set up and downloaded it in case I wanted to play.
Mm-hmm.
And then shortly before this year's spring tournament is when I actually started talking in the Discord and getting more active in it, and finally decided with the actual spring tournament starting to finally play the game that I had been saying I was going to play for a year and a half.
Did you watch on Twitch mostly, or were you watching on YouTube at the time?
No, I use Twitch. I try and avoid YouTube whenever possible, honestly.
That's fair. And there's an active community that was on there. It's still on there. And I know a few of us from the group tend to watch on YouTube instead of Twitch just because it's accessible to us at work. Something to keep on in the background. So
makes sense.
Yeah. So is Final Fantasy randomizer the only randomizer you actually play?
Yes, I played. Well, I shouldn't say I played. I started playing the vanilla version of Super Metroid and didn't get very far before I determined I was not good. So I never finished the vanilla version to actually start the randomizer of that. So yes, only FFR.
Yeah, because there are a few major randomizers out there that I think people tend to watch regularly. The Super Metroid, Link to the Past, and Final Fantasy at this point, I'd say, are the big three. I know there are others. There's like Zelda 2 and Zelda 1 and so forth. But when we're talking about the communities, it does feel like these are the ones. And as you mentioned with Super Metroid, that one has a skill level to it that I think makes it just a little harder for casual players to get into.
Yeah, it wasn't for me. I'm not much of a platformer to begin with, so
that's fair. Yeah, it's an interesting thing with the way the randomizer communities work is, and this is something that Rafe Hates Caleb was talking with me about yesterday. The skill level involved in each of them is different, and like for instance, what you need to know to be able to do stuff in Super Metroid is at a very high technical level, I would say, whereas like a game with Final Fantasy randomizer, menuing can be technical, but a lot of it's just knowing your route and knowing what you're doing, and essentially just like playing the chess of the game instead of like the active action of the game.
Yeah, it's all about the game itself and not the hacks or glitches or tricks like you see in something like Super Metroid or Zelda randomizer, where it's like, oh, you have to know how to do all these fancy bomb mock jump things,
and then hover over.
You're just playing the game.
Yeah.
So that's nice about FFR. You're just playing the game.
Since you're not much of a platformer, outside of Final Fantasy randomizer, what are the kinds of games that you play?
I play pretty much every kind of game, honestly. Platformers are really one thing I generally don't play. I have a bunch of puzzle games, but I haven't played a puzzle game in a long time. I stick mostly to shooters and RPGs, but I also love a good indie game. So
So shooters like Doom and Borderlands and those kind of games.
The new Doom is amazing.
Yeah.
It is one of the best shooters in recent memory. It's just so much fun.
I mean, I will admit that a conversation between the two of us on this is going to start and end at Doom 1 and Doom 2 because that's as far into the series as I got. But it does look pretty. I just haven't ever actually played it. I Every once in a while I see like the Dooms or the new Wolfensteins, and I think I could get into that. And then I try a shooter here or there. I picked up Far Cry Blood Dragon when that was out, and that game like kicked my butt in 2 stages, and I'm like, okay, I'm done. I'm out.
Yeah, I mean, Doom has a little bit of a difficulty level to it, but it's such a smooth. Now, you have to be able to play the game. Like, you have to have a computer that can play the game at high enough FPS.
Mm-hmm.
You definitely want 60 FPS for Doom because it's extremely fast paced, and it's just such a good game. It's so visceral, feeling like everything has punch and power to it in that game. Like, you really feel it.
Mm. It's an interesting one, and they're moving on to the sequel to that, Doom Eternal or something right now.
Yes, Doom Eternal, I believe, is scheduled for November of this year, I think. Yeah, but yes, the sequel is coming out.
And I assume that you'll then disappear from most things for a couple weeks while you play through that.
Disappears relative, but yes, I will be enjoying myself some Doom Eternal.
That's right around the time, actually, that the new Borderlands is going to be coming out, and I will probably fade out from the internet for a couple weeks when that happens, because I'm not normally good at shooters, but Borderlands is a series of games that I can really get into.
I played a couple hours of Borderlands 1 right after they announced, they did the remaster, they announced the remasters and announced 3. And I was gonna give the series a shot. I played a couple hours of Borderlands 1 and just realized it's not a solo game for me. I can't get into it solo.
Have you tried playing it with people?
We started a co-op game and played like 2 hours, and then it kind of fell by the wayside. And we never continued that game. So I could see playing the game, online co-op with people I know.
Yeah.
I tried the random matchmaking in one, and it's such a mess because there's no coordination. So it's just like you have no idea what's going on. You could be doing 4 different quests at one time.
Well, I always feel bad when my friends try and get me into that game because I have played that so much. It's like with Diablo, where I have so much of that game memorized as well at this point. Diablo 3. It's a friend comes in, is like, okay, I'm new to this game. Let's play. I go, okay, you're either going to have me going at 100% or I'm going to be plotting behind you because I don't want to ruin the story triggers for you. But if you let me run, we're just going to be doing everything all at once, and you're going to get through the game in like 8 hours. But yeah, no, I can understand that the Borderlands games are interesting, but I've had a number of friends who are like, I've tried it and it's okay, but it's just not for me. So it's something about the loot shooters because I've done a Destiny. Destiny was a game that a lot of people talked about and a lot of my friends were into, and that's just one that I couldn't get into at all. It did not hook me.
I really enjoyed Destiny. I mean, it may well be the best shooter mechanics wise of any recent game. It's that good. I mean, Bungie absolutely nailed the shooting mechanics of that game. It's a blast to play.
See, and that's the thing is like I never quibbled over the shooter mechanics themselves. They felt solid. It's just everything in and around it, the town and the story and the looting, none of that had that right impact, that right hook for me to get into the game.
That's fair. I mean, Destiny's 2 story was pretty good, especially compared to 1, but my main issue with Destiny is the monetization of it, and I'm going to pay $70 for the game, and then a year from now I'm going to pay another $70 for that year's worth of content. So by the end of that game in 2 years, you're at like $300 into the game just for all the DLCs, and I'm not about that.
Yeah, I mean,
give me the game and free updates.
Paid DLCs are one thing. I don't necessarily have a problem with it when the prices are decent, like $5-10 for a lengthy amount of game, but not expected to be as long as the original game, obviously. But when you're talking like $70 per year for it, you're practically talking MMO prices at that point, and there's a reason I didn't get into MMOs.
Yeah, that's fair. I haven't played an MMO in a while.
So since our shooter knowledge and the games that we play doesn't overlap, what RPGs are you into?
Oh, that depends on when you ask me. Um,
Well, let's go back. What were the first RPGs you got into?
First RPGs I got into. Oh
Hmm.
gosh. That's hard. I remember playing Warcraft.
Hmm.
I mean, I was big into Warcraft 1, 2, and 3, and StarCraft. The original StarCraft had so many hours playing StarCraft 64 with friends in local co-op.
Nice. I don't hear a
Um,
lot of people talk about the 64 version of that game. It's usually I'm playing it on PC, and that's the only way to play it.
I mean, it really is the only way to play it. But back in the day, nobody had PCs
Yeah.
because I mean, we're talking late '90s, right?
Well, and it's nice to
So
give the Nintendo 64 a little love.
yeah, nobody had PCs. So StarCraft 64, man, we'd sit around, four of us playing StarCraft 64.
So I assume we'll get back to RPGs and so forth in a second, but I assume since you were playing on your Nintendo 64 and you like shooters, GoldenEye 007 was probably a big one you played as well.
Of course, can't have a sleepover party without double I 007.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like after 007 came out, and that was a fantastic game. Like that one really nailed shooter mechanics on the console, and I think honestly has defined shooters on the console for years since. Because it's even now when you go back to it, as chunky as that game can be at times, there's a smoothness to it that a lot of games just can't quite recapture.
Yeah, I mean, it was such a good game, and it's right there, kind of with Perfect Dark for me for early console shooters. I
Well, I mean,
love Perfect Dark.
they were both from Rare, and they were basically using the same engine more or less.
Yeah, had so much fun with Perfect Dark back in the day.
Yeah, because I remember trying to play some of the other shooters that came out in the wake of GoldenEye, like the Mission Impossible game that another company put out, and none of them had that quite that strong visceral appeal, that fun to the co-op that GoldenEye did. There was a certain magic mix to it that other games haven't been able to replicate.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's a classic for
It is.
sure.
It is. So, well, since we're talking about like real time and so forth, the Warcraft series. I will admit that I didn't play the first one, but I have played a lot of Warcraft too. So orcs or humans?
Hmm. I, I mean, humans have a sort of boring human nature to them, right? So, of course, got to be more fans of orcs because they're not human.
It's true.
They've got all the cool, unique, classes like ogres and stuff like that, right? So
For the most part, there were benefits to each of the two sides, and for me, most of the time, it really boiled down to whether or not I wanted to have the paladin so that they could party heal, or if I was perfectly comfortable ignoring my characters and letting the axe throwers for the orcs just auto regenerate themselves when I earned that in the whatever it was that they had. Because it was nice. You could just like have them on a pack and just let them generate, and then when dragons and stuff flew at you, you just kill them and move on with your life.
yeah, it's been a long time since I played those games. I actually bought the remasters. I've got the remasters installed in my computer right now.
Hmm.
But obviously I haven't fired them up. Maybe when we get a Warcraft 3 remaster release date, because I've already got that pre-ordered.
Nice.
Maybe when we get a date for that, I'll do a Warcraft 1 and 2 playthrough and then straight into the Warcraft 3 campaign. And maybe possibly lose my life again to Warcraft 3 custom games.
Just marathon through it and then disappear for a month.
Yeah. Well, Warcraft 3 custom games was like the best thing ever.
Oh yeah.
Oh, almost certainly. It was so good. There was so many unique game styles that were created, and I mean, like, you know how popular Dota is these days, and
Hmm.
and that started, as far as I know, with the Warcraft 3 mod.
Yeah.
Now that was one community. The community in Warcraft 3 Dota is just as toxic as the standard Dota community these days, but
That's the internet in general. I mean, anytime you get enough people gathered together, you end up with a toxic environment. It's just something about the internet. It just happens, unfortunately.
Yeah, but there were some really good communities in Warcraft 3 custom games. Some of the like tower defense especially was typically a very welcoming community there, unlike
It's cool.
Dota.
That's cool. And that's not to disparage the community that we're both a part of. The FFR community has been very welcoming to, I think, to both of us since we've joined up.
I think it's welcoming to anybody.
Yeah,
It
that's what I mean.
doesn't really matter who you are.
That's
It's
what I mean.
such a great
Not just you and I, but
they like you and I, and they just hate everybody else.
I mean, I'm in. I don't really care. So, so
Yeah, it's such a great community.
So let's go back further. I mean, I haven't asked your age, and I won't. But what were some of the early games that you played growing up?
Well, obviously Warcraft 1, 2, StarCraft, Diablo. I played a little bit of, not a bunch of Diablo, but I was a big Blizzard person, if you can't tell.
I was about to say that seems to be where your wheelhouse was.
I was really big into PlayStation and N64 stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of really where I started. Was N64 and PlayStation were the two consoles I had.
Okay.
So that's what I played. Now, like if I was at family's house or whatever, we had Super Nintendos, but I don't think I actually owned a Super Nintendo. So for me, it was 64 and PlayStation. Final Fantasy Tactics was great until I got stuck where everybody got stuck. N64, like I said, Perfect Dark, Smash Brothers.
Smash Brothers.
I've got really fond memories of SimCity 2000 on the Super Nintendo.
That's an interesting one to talk about, yeah, because that's like everyone talks about the original SimCity on Super Nintendo because that was a really fun addition to that game. You don't hear a lot of people mention SimCity 2000 on it. That's another one of those where PC is the one that most people think about and tend to forget the Super Nintendo had a version.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was SimCity 2000 that we played. But that was something. My friend had a Super Nintendo and he had SimCity 2000. And I would spend a lot of time at his house.
Nice.
So that's one of the things we do. We'd sleep over in his living room and we'd stay up taking turns playing SimCity 2000 all night long. It was just so much fun. It's a really nostalgic game. SimCity 2000 is.
Oh yeah. So since you raised the point of it, and let's go in and talk about that because that's an interesting. It's a genre of games I haven't chatted with people about yet on this show. The Smash Brothers series. So it did come out on the Nintendo 64, but the Smash Brothers series is one that I feel like has both evolved over time and yet stayed fairly traditional to its roots the whole time. Because, I mean, you can go back, you can pick up the Nintendo 64 version, and while some of the characters have been tweaked over the course of their, 4 or so appearances that they've shown up in, like, the controls and the basic mechanics of the game are pretty much the same through the whole line of the series. What are your thoughts on the series? Where are you at? What version of that game is the one that you prefer?
Yeah, I've only played a few of them. Obviously, Smash 64 is those classics, and I think Melee was the big one that we spent a lot of time with. I've enjoyed them all. They're great, sit around couch co-op games, just playing for hours on end, fighting against each other. I really like the new version because it's called the Ultimate for a reason, right?
Yeah.
It really does. It's got literally everything that's ever been in a Smash game is in this new version. So it doesn't matter what you want to play. You can enjoy Smash, and it's such an easy game to pick up. You don't have to ever have played it before to be able to sit down and play it.
Yeah, no,
and I think that makes it such a great game.
That's part of what makes Smash such a joy is the simple mechanics of it. And I've seen other fighting games come out to try and mimic it, and it's that Nintendo HAL magic is they don't quite live up to it. But it's the thing of like Smash Brothers, you all the basic button combos are A and B with maybe a tap or a slap to the controller, whereas Mortal Kombat's and Street Fighters and all that, you're having to memorize button combos and special presses and so forth. There's an accessibility to the Smash Brothers games that isn't in other fighting games.
Right. It's super accessible, and that's what makes it so nice. It's literally just pick it up and play it. You don't need any previous experience, and it's not even really a fighter game, honestly.
not in the traditional sense, not in the beat them down with their HP and everything, because while there is kind of an HP meter, it's something that goes up unless you switch around the mechanics. And like, there's so much chaos on the stage that you don't traditionally get in a street fighting kind of game, because it's like a street fighting game is a backdrop, and then you just play against it in 2D or 3D depending upon how you're doing it. But with the Smash Brothers games, the stages are usually fighting you as much as the characters are.
Right. Yep.
hmm So what when you're playing the games, who do you play as?
Oh, who do I play as? Captain Falcon.
That's an
Typically.
interesting choice.
Yep. Yeah, he's always been a personal favorite since back in the early days when we first played it. It was always Captain Falcon for me.
What drew you into him specifically?
I couldn't tell you. Honestly, I like him. I like how he plays.
Do you play as Ganondorf as well, since he's basically a slow, powered up version of him?
I don't think I ever have. No.
Interesting. Anyone else you play as?
Not really. Again, I don't play it very often, so it's hard for me to remember all the characters. But Captain Falco is always my go-to.
That's cool. He's a fun character. He's fast and engaging, and different from a lot of the other guys that are in the game. So that's a cool choice. So at this point, like, what else are you playing right now? Are there any other games that have hooked your fancy outside of Doom?
I've been playing a lot of Siege with my cousin and our buddy. We have a group of between 3 and 5, depending on who's online. So we play Siege occasionally during the week. Rainbow Six. Other than that, I've got games coming up. I recently beat Rage 2 and Final Fantasy 12.
I remember you talking about both those games in the Discord. Yeah, and those are the diverse side, these shooters and the RPGs right there. What did you think of that was the Zodiac Age version that you were playing of Final Fantasy 12?
Yep, the ultimate version of Final Fantasy 12 Zodiac Age on Switch.
What did you think of it?
I love the game. I remember playing it back on PlayStation 2. Again, I didn't own one, but my buddy did. And I spent a lot of time at his house. So I pretty much watched him play the game. So I remember loving the game and the combat mechanics and the way that it was designed. So when they finally announced the Switch version, I knew right away I was getting it.
Yeah.
And I absolutely love the game. It's such a blast. There's so much to do in that game that I ended up not doing, and I still got like 50 hours into the game or something.
Wow, that's a crazy amount of content, all things considered.
Yeah. There's plenty of content in the game if you want to do all the side hunts and such, and go exploring the areas that you don't actually go to for the story. They also added a new game plus if you're really adventurous.
Is it like a Chrono Trigger New Game Plus? Is it just continue leveling your characters throughout the same game, or does everything get more difficult?
No, it's typical of New Game Plus for modern games. You start the game from the beginning with everything you had when you ended.
Okay, cool. That's
as far as I know.
That's cool. I mean, there's motivation in that, just because you can clear the early areas much more quickly, and then just be able to ransack and enjoy as you go exploring in new areas. Those are always fun. I like those kinds of modes.
Yeah, I've never done a New Game Plus myself because I've got so many games to play. I don't have time to replay a game.
Once I get into a game, I get a little obsessive, and if there's stuff like that, I'll at least play a few hours in the New Game Plus before I go involve myself in something else.
That's fair.
Yeah. So, outside of video gaming, as we are slowly approaching the end of this time, and I don't want to take up your entire afternoon. I know you have stuff going on. What outside of video gaming, what other interests do you have? My website covers all kinds of geeky topics, so I'm curious to see what people do when they're not playing video games.
Work.
Not really an interest.
I don't have a choice in that regard, though.
Yeah. I mean, unless you love your work, that's not really an interest, though.
I've been getting myself back into reading books. That's something I kind of lost after college. And I did a lot of it in college because I'd sit on campus for 6 hours between classes.
Yeah.
And then I leave college and have to start working, and it kind of went off to the wayside.
Yeah, I get that.
So I'm getting back into reading finally.
What kind of books do you read?
A little bit of everything, honestly. not so much fantasy, sci-fi stuff. There's a few series. I'm actually reading one right now.
What
Most
series?
of my book collection is fiction, Clancy, Baldacci, Vince Flynn. Currently, I'm working through reading Temeraire again, and I'm also reading a series called A Pattern of Shadow and Light.
Okay.
And that is high fantasy, sort of along the lines of like a Game of Thrones type of level of depth to it and such.
Did you read the Game of Thrones series?
I have read all 5 books, yes.
Such as is out, of course, right now, since that series isn't actually completed.
Right. Yeah, I have read them. I haven't read them since the last book came out.
Yeah.
I have read them, yes.
So did you, since this was a topic, at this point, a couple months ago at this point, I am curious, did you watch the TV series that was based on it?
Unfortunately. that last season is tough to talk about, man.
Even now, all this time later, it's rage-inducing.
It's tough to talk about.
Did you enjoy it in the early going?
I mean, I love the series. Even the end. I still like the end, but it was too rushed for the direction they wanted to take the storylines.
I agree with that wholeheartedly.
I don't mind the storylines at all. I have no issue with the storylines, really, even though I didn't particularly like them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't mind them for what the world is and what the story is.
They kind of fit in with where the world was headed.
They didn't give it enough time to properly develop and explain why that was the ending.
Yeah. It's that thing of watching and I'm like, I kind of get everything they're doing, but it feels like instead of 13 episodes for the last 2 seasons, this could have been like 20 to 30 episodes to really give it the life it needed.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out why they rushed that. So, and then let's take this just a little further afield. I'm curious about this. This is something I've been asking everyone before we wrap up the show. What is something odd or interesting that most people might not know about you?
Well, I'm a pretty boring person overall. The only really unique thing I've ever done is I did take a trip to Australia for 18 days back in high school for through one of the programs that does that.
Oh yeah? How was that?
Oh, I loved it. It was a great time. Australia is a beautiful country.
You end up doing anything special there while you were there?
I mean, your typical touristy things. Now we did things that you probably wouldn't do on your own, like spend a day at an Aboriginal like encampment type thing and take you through the woods. We had kangaroo tail for dinner, and so you might not get that on a normal tourist experience, but it was a lot of fun. Australia was.
That's awesome. All right, well, I think we've covered all the very basic stuff for you, and that's been a fun time here so far. I appreciate you coming on the show, Thilenios.
Yeah, I mean, not like I had anything better to do on my Saturday morning anyway. I was just sitting around watching soccer.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate you being on the show. Before I do the outro, if people want to follow what you're doing online or anything else, do you have a Twitch or a Twitter or anything you want to promote?
I am Thilenios everywhere, so I don't know if you want to link that or I can spell it out.
Well, spell it out here once, just in case they get this podcast from somewhere other than my website.
It is Thilenios.
And that's on Twitch and Twitter. Are you like an Instagrammer or anything else?
I am on Twitter, Twitch, and Mixer.
Okay.
Sometimes I stream on Mixer. All of my FFR stuff I'm streaming on Twitch because that's where the FFR streaming stuff is.
That's the community right there, yeah.
So Twitter and Twitch mainly for me.
That's cool. All right, well, I appreciate you being on the show. This has been Not So Live from Asteroid G. I am Mike Finkelstein, joined in the booth by Thilenios, and we will see you next time.